What can $1 billion of taxpayer money buy you? Apparently,
It can buy you truth itself.
Viva Frei, Montreal litigator turned YouTuber, and this is Winnie the Westie. I am also now an aspiring member of Canadian Parliament for the People's Party of Canada, and in the pursuit of my run for Parliament, I come across all sorts of news stories, and the other day I came across a soundbite, allegedly of Justin Trudeau, that I said sounded too fishy to be true. The soundbite in question is apparently a video of Justin Trudeau himself purportedly bragging about how he bought off the mainstream media with $600 million in government subsidies. I'm going to play you the clip, I'm going to show you some news, and then we are going to break down how this is yet again another fake news vortex brought to you by the fully subsidized mainstream media in Canada.
Now, you sometimes hear about liberal bias in the media these days, how they're constantly letting our government off the hook for no good reason. Frankly, I think that's insulting. It's clear that they let us off the hook for a very good reason, because we paid them $600 million.
All right, so that is the clip. We're going to break it down in a little more detail in a bit. But for those of you who don't know, the CBC is the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. They are basically a subsidized news outlet, subsidized by our taxpayer dollars through the federal government to the tune of $1 billion a year. From the CBC Radio-Canada 2019-2020 annual report, revenues and other sources of funds. Scrolling right along, revenue and other sources of funds. CBC Radio-Canada has 4 sources of direct funding: government appropriations for operating and capital expenditures, advertising revenue, subscriber fees, and financing and other income. Government funding: this year operating funding was $1,098.1 million. Capital funding recognized in income was $106.9 million, and working capital was $4 million.
Operating funding was $1,098.1 million.
You know what $1,000 million is? It's $1 billion. This is like listening to kids talk about money having no idea what the quantities they are talking about mean. It's like listening to Chester P. Lampwick sue Itchy and Scratchy for $100 billion.
$800 billion.
Operating funding for the government for CBC Radio-Canada was $1,000 million, $1 billion to an allegedly
Free and independent media.
Jesus Christ, great.
I don't care who you are, when you are getting monumental amounts of cash from anyone, you become beholden to that person, and the CBC Radio-Canada, when they receive $1 billion from the government, is beholden to the government, pure and simple. But don't worry, the Justin Trudeau Liberal government did not stop with the CBC Radio-Canada. They outstretched their arm of monetary support to the entire media industry in the order of $600 million. From the Globe and Mail, media sector gets $595 million package in Ottawa's fiscal update. So with that knowledge at hand that the CBC Radio-Canada gets in the order of $1,000 million a year from the federal government, that Justin Trudeau's Liberal government also gave out $600 million to the media industry as a whole, now let's go back to that video purportedly showing Justin Trudeau bragging about how he bought Canadian media. Now when I saw this video, I did in fact think it had to be fake. It's impossible that Justin Trudeau actually said something like this. I listened to the video, I thought maybe his voice sounded a little deep, maybe it was a voice-over deep fake, something to that effect, but no, don't worry about it. The CBC itself confirmed to me exactly what was fake about this, and lo and behold, nothing is fake about this video. These are in fact words that Justin Trudeau himself in fact spoke to a crowd, seemingly bragging about how he bought out the mainstream media with a $600 million bailout package. But what do the fact checkers at the CBC have to say about this video? The same fact checkers who are receiving in the order of $1 billion from the government that they are fact checking right now, listen to what the CBC has to say about this story. It's in the science section for some reason. Misleading Trudeau, quote, joke video demonstrates the political power of editing. Video shows joke Trudeau made at dinner in May, but removes important part of punchline. Kaylee Rogers, Andrew Bellemare, CBC News, posted September 6, 2019, 5:29 p.m.
Now, you sometimes hear about liberal bias in the media these days, how they're constantly letting our government off the hook for no good reason. Frankly, I think that's insulting. It's clear that they let us off the hook for a very good reason, because we paid them $600 million. Because we paid them $600 million. We paid them $600 million.
We paid them $600 million.
Remember these words? Misleading, the power of editing, and spoiler alert, there is in fact no editing in this. It just cuts a little short of the punchline, and when you hear the punchline, you're going to realize that CBC is making a distinction without a difference. A misleading video claiming to show Prime Minister Justin Trudeau bragging about bribing Canadian media has been viewed more than 250,000 times online. The video actually shows Trudeau telling a joke during the Parliamentary Press Gallery dinner and removes important context, such as the less than flattering headlines about him that Trudeau cited as his punchline. It's a small tweak that distorts the video's meaning without sophisticated editing, but it's effective because it plays on very real concerns and criticisms of the government's so-called media bailout program. It's effective because it plays on people's very real concerns about the media bailout program. It's not effective because it is actually the Prime Minister of Canada actually joking about having bought out the media with the $600 million, despite the punchline, which we're going to get to in a second. Yeah, that's what's disturbing about this video. If you've been around this channel long enough, you know we often talk about confession through projection. Well, there's another expression I also like. It is called truth in jest, meaning there is truth in jokes that people made. Justin Trudeau made this joke because he knows there is truth to it. But let's just hear the punchline of this joke that allegedly shows how this video clip is misleading through the power of selective editing. Quote, now you sometimes hear about liberal bias in the media these days, how they're constantly letting our government off the hook for no good reason, end quote. Trudeau begins. Quote, frankly, I think that's insulting. It's clear they let us off the hook for a very good reason, because we paid them $600 million, end quote. At this point, a number of headlines begin to appear on the screen. At the dinner, these were projected behind Trudeau. The headlines include one from the Toronto Star that reads, quote, Justin Trudeau is tampering with Canada's brand, end quote, and another from the Globe and Mail stating, quote, Trudeau has lost the moral mandate to govern, end quote. Trudeau then quips, quote, you don't get stellar headlines like these without greasing the wheels a bit, end quote. However, in the edited video, those headlines are covered up by a still image from a Conservative Party of Canada campaign ad before the video fades out. The video has been shared online with titles such as, quote, Justin Trudeau arrogantly brags about bribing the media, end quote. Now, I never support taking something out of context in order to misrepresent what was said, the meaning of what was said, full stop, and part of me wishes that they had actually included the last part of the video that they did seem to edit out, because I think had they included the punchline and included those headlines, it would have only amplified the point. The CBC saying that by having edited out the punchline, Trudeau saying you don't get stellar headlines like this without greasing the wheels a bit, as though it's ironic, as though he's getting bad headlines despite having greased the wheel, I don't think that changes anything in the video whatsoever. I actually think that only compounds the fact that Justin Trudeau knows darn well what he was doing by greasing the wheels with $600 million in government bailout, and who knows how much worse those headlines would have been had it been an objective and fair and non-subsidized media. As far as I'm concerned, the fact that those were the two worst headlines that Justin Trudeau could use for the purported punchline of his joke only proves the point how in bed the media is in fact with the government, strictly as a result of those government bailouts. So I do agree with the CBC. This video clip should have been played in its entirety because the punchline doesn't change the point. It emphasizes the point. The point is that Justin Trudeau knew darn well what he was doing. He knew what he was joking about, and he knew darn well that if it wasn't the intended result, it would be a very fortunate coincidental result that by giving the media $600 million in bailout, they might be a little friendlier with the hand that feeds them. But lo and behold, you have the $1,098 million subsidized CBC media running hardcover for the government that feeds them for the benefit of the media that is also sucking from the same government teat. Quote, this is an interesting example of how a tiny little cut or edit can make something that actually happened become misleading, end quote, said Gordon Pennycook, an assistant professor at the University of Regina who researches disinformation. A professor of disinformation spreading disinformation? Who would have thunk hashtag
Confession through projection.
Quote, there's been a lot of hand-wringing about deepfake videos and that kind of stuff, but with selective editing, you can do quite a bit to mislead people, end quote. Some viewers of the video on social media and YouTube have noticed that the clip was meant to be a joke and has been taken out of context, but that hasn't slowed its spread. A joke. Do you know what makes a joke funny? The element of truth to the joke. No joke is funny unless it has some basis in reality. The court jester mocking the king is not funny unless there's some basis in reality. This joke from Justin Trudeau is just not funny unless it has a basis in reality. And for anyone to purport that giving $600 million to the media industry does not grease the wheels a bit is being naive at best and disingenuous at worst. Actually, they're being bald-faced liars at worst. I'm just trying to be polite.
Because I'm Canadian, that's what we do after all.
Then more from the heavily greased wheels of the $1,098 million subsidized CBC. This kind of disinformation is particularly effective because it aligns with many viewers' existing beliefs, said Samantha Bradshaw, a researcher on the Computational Propaganda Project at Oxford University. It's also particularly effective because it actually happened and it's actually true. But no, slap the labels misinformation and propaganda of a video of something Justin Trudeau actually said based on facts that actually occurred, and somehow you discredit the message itself. Later on, quoting Aaron Wudrick, the federal director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, quote, "The fact that this bailout allows people to frame any type of criticism or any type of support of the government as being bought and paid for is very, very damaging to what is already a tenuous level of trust in a very important institution," end quote. You know what else damages that trust? Taking $600 million from the government and going from a free and independent media to the mouthpiece of the government that subsidizes you. And I think I see my wife here. What's up?
I need the office. You almost done?
I think I'm almost done. Give me 1 second to check my notes. I'm almost done. 1 minute. But don't take my word for it, just listen to some of the concerns that other journalists had at the time. CBC News, politics. Journalists question Liberal government's $600 million media bailout plan. Quote, "You have people who are dead set against the government giving any kind of money to the media. Quote, "I just don't think it's the right solution. I think it carries the potential to do more harm to news agencies' credibility than it does to actually do anything more than protect existing systems in the short term," end quote, he told CBC News. The government says there's nothing political about its plan, that it only wants to ensure Canadians have access to accurate, relevant news. Federal Conservatives have long criticized the government's plan, saying the Liberals are trying to co-opt Canada's news media.
But they let us off the hook for a very good reason. Because we paid them $600 million.
In normal times, the government giving hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars, to media agencies would be a no-brainer of a problem, but alas, we are not living through normal times, and you have some in the media that is being subsidized by the government trying to justify the subsidies from the government. As if that isn't the perfect example of circular self-fulfilling reasoning and logic, I don't know what else to say, but if you like my videos, you like my content, please be sure to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and drop a comment in the comment section below, because it feeds the algorithm.
Tina, you fat lard, come get some dinner.
If you want to support the channel, all the support links are in the pinned comment. Robert Barnes and I do weekly live streams every Sunday. We do weekly streams with a guest every Wednesday called The Sidebar. You can also find us and support us at locals at
vivabarneslaw.locals.com.
All of my content is also on Rumble if you want to watch it there, but more important than any of that, take care of yourselves, check in on friends and family, make sure everyone around you is doing well, and now you know your vlog. Peace out. Booyah!